Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, securities analyst, and advisor, Morty Davis is a Wall Street legend. In addition, Mr. Davis is an outstanding economist and highly articulate, incisive, and very entertaining political analyst and strategist. He's Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical economic and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on the news making the headlines is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Hello again. It's great to be back with you, my beloved participants in this podcast. You add so much to any success that this podcast enjoys because of your input, your comments to me every week that you send in, even the ones that I find initially hurtful because they're so critical of me and my thoughts. When I have time and reflect on them, they're terrific in their presentation because they open my mind to new ways of thinking. You don't just throw out wild ideas. You come up with interesting insights that I have to take into consideration, and it broadens my own wisdom. So thank you all for your active participation. I love you all, and every one of you is in my prayers every week for a great life and everything wonderful. So now, without further ado, let's launch this week's podcast. And as always, I need to start out by apologizing because by its nature, if you're at all normal, when I heard the week's news initially, the breaking news, what the media considers the important news, interrupting my listening habits, my various newspaper headlines, and my cable listening, inevitably and without any deviation, the news is always tragedies, disappointments of human behavior, mass slaughters, someone with a gun attacking a kindergarten class with students that are 4 or 5 years old or younger, and their teachers, and of fires in California and elsewhere that burned people's homes and put them in shelters. They lose all their belongings and everything. And weather breakouts like tornadoes and hurricanes, all bad news, all horrible, all people getting killed without doing anything that warrants their elimination in such a manner. So I know the first time I hear those announcements and learn of those front page articles or breaking news announcements that tell of these mass shootings of people, innocent people gathered at church or at synagogue or at social events that supposedly raise money for charities or are there for the fun of the participants and turn into major tragedies. So the only thing that's reported as breaking news the prior week before we go on are these kind of very upsetting, very disturbing announcements and headlines and interruptions of my favorite network programs and yours and our favorite cable programs and so forth. So I know when I first hear them or learn of them through the announcements or through the front page of the New York Times or the New York Post or the Washington Post or my favorite magazines, the minute they're announced, I go into a terrible funk, depression, because little kids being slaughtered in classrooms, kids anywhere from 4 years old and younger even, and their teachers, it's unbelievable. I can't even fathom that that's the world we live in. And that's the important news of the week. Good news is not news. It doesn't make the front page. Even if somebody donates $50 million to a university, it doesn't make the front page for some reason. It's taken for granted. It's a nice gesture. And it appears somewhere in the midsection of the newspaper or the magazine and so forth. It doesn't get announced as breaking news. So I start off each week's program apologizing, not because I caused it, but because what we discuss is the very things I'm saying depressed me during the week when I first announced them, and it depressed me again even as I discuss them now on this podcast, and I'm bound to depress you if you're at all normal, because learning of little kindergarten kids and younger being slaughtered and while in their classrooms or in their playrooms and their teachers being slaughtered, it's intolerable, you know. It shouldn't be news. It should be, I don't know what you'd call it, but that's what makes the front page. And that's why I have a copy of my book, Happiness Guaranteed, on your misery back on your screen now if you have this podcast on your TV screen. The bottom of the cover, the front page, front cover says, my screen is too small to include that bottom of the page, the lower part of the cover, but it's how to be happy no matter what is the theme of this book. And it's byproduct of something that changed my life. When I was young, I was brought up in the height of the Depression. As a matter of fact, I was born in the year 1929, which was the onset of the greatest depression in the history of America, economic depression, mass unemployment. People couldn't get a job to pay for their basic needs, for their food, for a roof over their head, for heat in their apartments or what have you. It was just horrendous. And watching my father go through this, not being able to get a job, not being able to bring home enough money to provide for his wife, my mother, and their three kids, me and my brother and my younger sister. It was depressing at the very least. So I was always depressed by the environment at the time and the tragedies that occurred of poverty, starvation, people living in the streets, homeless. Until one day, I ran across a book by a famous Catholic bishop who led a church in Midtown Manhattan, Norman Vincent Peale. And he wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. How it was crucial that we think positively, and that'll take us out of our funk of being depressed and make us deal with life more positive, with unpleasant events in a way that we could overcome their depressive effect and led to positive thinking that made us happier and more content. I use the word more content rather than happy, because in this country, happiness is always seen as people bashing each other on the back and laughing and dancing around under the influence of a quart of whiskey or a shot of vodka or some addictive drug like marijuana or worse, that makes them seem happy, only to find that after the momentary effect wears off, they're more miserable than ever because they're left with hangovers and headaches and nauseous and stomach pains and whatnot. So I'm talking about happiness that brings contentment. And Bishop Sheehan's book, when I came across that book, great book, did that for me. The name of the book was The Power of Positive Thinking. Whatever happens, address it, even the worst tragedy, with positivity, that it's only momentary, that it will pass, and that you have a lot of good things to look forward to, not just focus forever and incessantly on this momentary tragedy. So that's why I have this book in front of me, in front of you, if you have your TV on. Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. The bottom of the cover says, how to be happy no matter what. And this book, by its teachings, picking up where Bishop Sheehan took me off in that direction, to think positively and to address the current, whatever negative current event in a positive manner that looks forward to the positivities that yet are forthcoming in my life. Like if I'm encouraging my best friend was going through a major loss, even the death of an immediate family member, a father, a mother, even a child. I visit with him, I commiserate with him, I share his feeling of hurt and loss, and then I go on to remind him that not only this too shall pass, as Solomon advised, but that's not enough. But I remind him that, remember last year in October, November, we went to Vermont skiing and we had such a great time, and we have that event scheduled again this year. So I get him off the momentary disaster that he's focused on, and hopefully to start to think of the positives that the hold and the fun things that hold for him and me as well in our future. So that's why, after reading Bishop Sheen's book that changed my life, I was never depressed by bad news again. I always addressed each event positively, even though it hurt, and went on to think of the positives that the future holds for me and for my loved ones. And it was so constructive. That and a book by a famous writer, a nonfiction writer named Dale Carnegie, who had written a worldwide bestseller. Throughout the world, it was a bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he followed that with a book called How to Stop Worrying and Stop Living. And that book, along with Bishop Sheen's book, helped me change my life and be, ever since, get away from staying in any funky mood of a depressed mood and move on to positive mood. So that motivated me to, for the next 8 years, to prepare this book you see, have in front of you on your screen, Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. I guarantee you it will raise you to the level of your happiness, true happiness. So this book is a dedication to my family, to my spouse, my children, my grandchildren, my best friends, my neighbors, my fellow Americans, my fellow human beings throughout the world. And I devoted the next 8 years of my life totally, almost 24/7, to gathering all of the kind of inspiring, uplifting wisdom and writings and philosophies all the way to the beginning of mankind, of our great religious leaders, our Bibles that give wonderful advice on true happiness or contentment and joy and enjoying one's family and one's children and enjoy being alive and having just good health and being so appreciative. So I decided to devote all of the next 8 years to preparing all of the gathering and preparing all of the wisdom presented since the beginning of mankind, all the way back to Adam and Eve and on, right up past the Greeks, the philosophers, the great philosophers, as Aristotle and Plato, and up to the present day, Freud and the development of his tremendous science, psychology and psychiatry, and all of the writings and all of the teachings of the Bibles and all of the wisdom that has been gathered since the beginning of time that I could find and put it in a book for the benefit of my loved ones and my neighbors and my fellow American citizens and my fellow human beings throughout the world. So I spent day and night for 8 years dedicated to that, to it, doing for my loved ones, for all my loved ones, and all the people I cared for, and for all human beings, to do for them what Bishop Sheehan's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, and Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, had done for me. And so without further ado, run out and get this book. It'll be the best investment you ever made in your life. I promise you.
Thank you, Morty. So, we took a little detour last week to talk about some investing. We had an interesting guest, but in the last week or so, a few very interesting events in Washington and on Wall Street, which I think we'll start off by reviewing and discussing. So first, we saw over the weekend, as part of the administration's celebration of the country's 250th birthday, an event, we'll call it, on the south lawn of the White House, a UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship mixed martial arts fights, if you will. Also corresponding with President Trump's 80th birthday. And
happy birthday, Donald. Donald is a good friend of mine, long-term friend of mine, and I wish you a very happy birthday, Donald. Many more.
Yep.
And good health.
So, we saw the South Lawn turned into this event. Some people call it a spectacle. I guess the first question: what was your impression? And should the White House be used for entertainment events like this, or does it kind of blur the line, as some critics say, between public office, private promotion, and political branding? What's your thought?
Well, I don't think it's terrible if the purpose is to make the 250th anniversary a happy event, and this can contribute to the happiness of our electorate, our American citizens. But to the extent it benefits the president monetarily, it goes against the Constitution, which warns against the president receiving any emoluments, any financial benefits of his serving this country as our elected leader.
In this case, we saw some of the bonuses at the event were paid in the form of, a Trump-linked cryptocurrency. Although the bonuses were paid, I understand, by the sponsors of the event, not the taxpayers. When it involves, it's something linked to the elected officials, even if it's a cryptocurrency, that could raise the appearance.
Yeah, well, if it results in the president benefiting financially, monetarily, then that's wrong in the face of the Constitution's warning against the president receiving any, they use the word emoluments, any financial benefits while serving that office.
Both, and the emoluments clauses in the Constitution were established for both domestic influence and foreign influence. So,
of course,
they were. I think the framers were nervous that foreign governments, foreign adversaries, could influence elected officials with financial lures, and that could corrupt the
even before that, even without considering that, when you think of the enormous political contributions that are made to people who are vying to gain office through the electorate, that is a form of outright bribery. Because if one of their contributors gives them $1 million or $2 million or whatever, some large sum to help them win the election, there's no way that doesn't act as a sort of a silent bribe, because they'll always go back to that person who made that big contribution and ask for his advice on how he'd like the elected official to vote on a given issue. So that's sort of a legal form of bribery, and unfortunately, in my view, the Supreme Court, through the validation of the, what was it called? Citizens
United.
Was that
Citizens United.
that gave its endorsement to corporations which they said are considered to be
people and therefore can be donors.
Yeah. That's it. People, and therefore can make enormous
contributions.
Donations,
yep.
Yeah. It's turned into the guy that gives the most, that's the biggest bribery to get the vote he wants.
So what do you think we could do to put in safeguards in some way, to prevent this from happening or prevent the appearance of it from happening? I mean, there are the rules, but the rules have to be followed.
Yeah.
If they're not followed, then how do what you think this, like,
Well, it seems either the Supreme Court and or the Congress should make sure that the president adheres to this, or caution against the president receiving any emoluments, any financial benefits while serving in the role of president.
I guess we have, I mean, in some way we do have the safeguards. I mean, we have constitutional procedures for checking and balancing the president. Impeachment is the major one, but
it hasn't
become
been
such a political
but it hasn't been
following as opposed
instituted as an action of the Supreme Court.
One man's emolument is another man's thank you gift, you know? So, and as we've seen, a lot of Republican members are loath to cross the president and tend to agree with his interpretation of a lot of issues, which not everyone might agree with. So.
Well, it's hard.
I don't know how you fix that one.
It's hard for the Congress themselves to criticize the president when they themselves had made a rule that if they buy stocks that on the news that they heard at a private session that was given a big contract to some corporation, which is inside information and not yet divulged
to the public,
to the general public.
Yep.
So the poor guy who sells it without knowing that news is penalized, and other people are in jail for taking inside information and using it. Inside information being information not yet divulged by the public, but somehow acquired by them through inside relationships or whatnot. And so they can't criticize the president because they provide for themselves to make big profits. And it's been discovered that somebody like who was the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has made millions of dollars by running out and buying shares in a company that she learned Congress has just voted to give a big contract, or the government has just voted to give a big contract to a defense company.
So speaking of big contracts, let's move to the other big issue of the past week, which was the IPO of the largest IPO ever, SpaceX, Elon Musk's mega company, because that is an interesting Wall Street case study, as well as it raises and begs questions about how should the government conduct certain activities that it wants to in terms of itself or through the private sector. So first we saw this massive IPO, 80-something billion dollars, at a valuation of $1.5 trillion or all $2 trillion for a company that has a few billion in revenue and loses a few $billion. So how does, I guess first from a Wall Street perspective, you've seen lots of IPOs and lots of companies that go public on the coming world and hopes and dreams and not necessarily financials, but rather expectations. How does how do you value a company? And it went up in the aftermarket. It went up like 50, came out at 135 and is over 200.
Really?
Yeah. So I think the market cap now is 2.6 trillion or something.
Just shows you
How do you
if you
do that? How can you justify, or is it just an exuberance?
if you
You know,
it seems like if you produce big enough losses, you get a big
and they're not even that
valuation.
big. I mean, they're big, but they're not even like they're 10 billion. I don't know, 20. It's
Well,
like,
it's with the
that
expectation
they'll be bigger.
no, that the government's going to be giving this company enormous
Right.
contracts, very profitable contracts. So it's selling on discounting the future
But that's
behavior of the
a
government.
heck of a discount. I mean, Apple's market cap is 4 point something trillion, and Apple makes billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Its PE ratio is in the 20s, I think. So I mean, the 30s. So I mean, that's high, but it's at least it's a function of the real earnings.
Right.
A lot of earnings. In this case, I don't know. But the question I think this begs or asks is, historically, space exploration was the purview of the government through NASA, government agency.
Yeah, ever since Sputnik, ever since
the formation of
the Russians shot up Sputnik, the government set up a vast program to develop satellites
and then
to beat the Russians to the moon.
And then on to other space exploration and moon exploration, all through the government's own doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they I'm sure use some private, manufacturers to build some things that they may have needed, to build the Apollo rockets and whatnot. But the organization was within the government. Now it's privatized, so it's like the defense contract industry where the government enters into contracts with private companies to do certain things. In this case, build rockets and send men into space and to Mars and women. So I guess you think that, is that a good thing? Some people I'm sure would argue it's efficient because the government, as you once said, if the government ran the Sahara Desert, there'd be a sand shortage. Other people say it's not good to privatize things like this because it's national security, national, importance, and should something happen with the private company, that
and they were
then what do you do?
And they were already doing it, and they were leaders in this area.
Right.
So why take it and turn it over to private industry? I think it emanates from the fact that communist countries own the wheels of production. So we don't want to have the government own companies. It's the only thing I could understand, because we were there. We could have owned all this,
right,
and the country could have been $2 trillion wealthier. It's only because these companies will now be getting these government contracts that they sell.
Right.
At this outrageous.
I mean, if you believe that the private sector can do things more efficiently and more quickly, perhaps, then taxpayers are better off paying the money to SpaceX rather than, wasting it in the bureaucracy of the government. Who knows? I mean, I don't know how true or not true that is. The problem is, like any duopoly or monopoly, if you have one provider like SpaceX, and they know they're the only provider, then there's less of an incentive to be highly efficient.
I believe private industry can do a better job of running operations because it's not so bureaucratic. But on the other hand, the benefits don't go to the public because they take that benefit and make sure it increases their profits.
Right, benefits to shareholders.
Yeah.
But even how can you be so sure that they will even do it more efficiently, right? I mean, what's this? If there's no competition, then where's the incentive to do things most efficiently? I mean, in this case, there is there's Blue Origin, there's that Bezos rocket company that's sort of competes with SpaceX on rocket launches and satellite.
Well, the government does a better job.
But if there's just one, why would SpaceX? Where's the incentive for SpaceX to do it efficiently when they're the only provider? It's not like the defense industry where you have Lockheed and Boeing and all these.
It's their incentive to do it more efficiently.
Yeah. Why?
So they could benefit their company, their shareholders, not to deliver the benefit.
I guess what's their incentive to give it at a price?
Not to deliver better results for the public.
But what's the incentive to do it at the lowest possible price, which is there would be if you were competing in a free market?
They want to do it for the lowest possible price.
No, they don't. They want to do it for the highest possible price.
No, they want to sell it for the highest possible, but they want to produce it for the lowest possible.
When I said do, I meant to sell it.
No, they want to produce it for the lowest possible price.
But sell it for the highest possible price.
So they can maximize
So what's
what was that? The economist that got the Nobel Prize?
Milton Friedman.
Milton Friedman.
Right.
At the University of Chicago.
Right.
And he says the sole role of the corporation is to maximize the profits for its shareholders, not to do anything positive.
So if the incentive is to sell it at the highest price,
not for its employees, not for its consumers,
not for any other constituents other than shareholders, right? So, but if that's part of that,
that's America.
Objective.
That's capitalism.
Is to maximize shareholder wealth and value. If part of that is selling at the highest possible price, right? Because the more revenues you make,
right.
So, doesn't that hurt the government? Because the government has no choice; it has to buy it at this price. If there's no other competitors, if they can't buy rockets from anyone else other than SpaceX, and SpaceX knows that, they just charge them.
You're raising a good point. But some years ago, they pointed out just one instance that the government pays defense industry like $1.5 million for a toilet on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rationale for that, nothing. It's whatever the market can tolerate and whatever they can get away with.
But at least with some parts of the defense industry, you have multiple companies that can make airplanes, multiple companies that can make a tank.
But they have multiple companies that can make toilets.
Toilet seats, and it still come out to be 5,000 toilets.
There's no motive on the part of congressmen
I think that's part
who benefit their communities by bringing jobs.
Efficiency in the government.
Yeah.
But so if you think that makes sense, what other industries are, if you could privatize more industries, what do you think would be, if the space industry works, with SpaceX, what else is there What else could the government or should the government
What do you mean if
privatize?
the space?
If the
It doesn't
government,
benefit.
if the relationship between the government and SpaceX is a good one,
Who said it's a good
that's what
one?
I'm asking. Do you think so? You don't think you think they should have kept it through NASA?
Yeah,
So don't ever privatize
they would
things
have
like that.
been worth $2 trillion more. If they're more efficient, then they should insist that they get the benefit of that efficiency to the to the government. But they don't give the benefit to the government.
Right.
They give it to their. That's why it sells so high, because they expect to have enormous profits.
So, all right. Well, that's the week in a nutshell, I guess. We're about out of time, but we will.
Like every other week, it
Yeah,
winds up with a depressing.
not too depressing this week. Could have been worse. Well,
It could always be worse, but it's pretty bad when all of the benefits.
At least there's some happy
that
SpaceX shareholders who weren't depressed
No,
this week.
but-
I heard some even like engineers who were just like regular low
Became millionaires, yeah.
like 5 million apiece. Never thought, but I guess when the company's 2.6 trillion, there's a lot to go around.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you again, Morty, for an interesting
Thank
conversation.
you all. I look forward to being with you next Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Have a wonderful week, you and all your loved ones. Enjoy good health and everything great today and every day of your lives unto eternity. God bless you, and I look forward to being with you again same time next week, 6:30 Wednesday evening. Bye.